Welcome, everyone. This is Adirondack Wilderness Advocates here. We're doing our 10th podcast. Thank you all for joining us. Just so you all know, Adirondack Wilderness Advocates is dedicated to promoting the knowledge, enjoyment, expansion, and protection of the Adirondack Park's wildest places. So today we just kind of wanted to have a fun discussion, talk a little bit about, who we are and what we've done this year. And I'm joined by other board members. My name's Kayla White. I am the vice chair. If we want to go around and introduce ourselves, Pete, you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Pete Nelson. I'm the current chair. Hello, everyone.
And I'm Craig McGowan. I'm the treasurer.
Ray Epstein, I'm the secretary.
Awesome. Well, first, we just kind of wanted to do some questions, ask the board, and have a really nice discussion. So just kind of starting off, asking us all kind of why did we join Adirondack Wilderness Advocates? And maybe Pete, you might want to start since you're a founding member.
Sure. I'm happy to start, and I'll keep it short. Um, so I think some people, some of our supporters, and thank you to our supporters, by the way, have a pretty good idea of the founding already. I think it'd be great to hear some of the stories of the rest of the folks on our board. But during the Boreas campaign, when there was a classification issue, what are we going to do with this amazing, pristine, beautiful parcel? Uh, I certainly thought that it should be wilderness in its entirety. The issue really was the road, Gulf Brook Road. And it took very little time for me to discover that there were other folks that felt the same way. So two of them in particular, co-founders, Bill Ingersoll and Brendan Wiltz, and I started writing each other and talking about it and meeting up. And we met on the parcel and bushwhacked up Ragged Mountain South. And we thought, not only do we agree on this, but there seems to be a lot of grassroots energy for people who feel the same way we do, that wilderness is an unbelievably precious and scarce resource. So why don't we try a little grassroots action? And long story short, our little group, which began informally and then formed as Adirondack Wilderness Advocates, produced more comments from the public for wilderness than any other environmental group, which was really impressive. So we've carried that momentum forward, and it's really exciting to be part of a grassroots operation. And I think we'll probably talk about it a little more, but we don't have paid staff, we don't have lobbyists. What we do have is pure motives about wilderness and how remarkable it is. And there's a lot left to do. So it was exciting then, and it's exciting now.
Awesome, Pete. What else? What do you guys think, Ari and Craig?
Well, the easy answer is Pete invited me to join the group and made a very persuasive case and pulled me in. It was during the Boreas campaign as well. And I read some of the articles and writings that the group was publishing as they were developing these ideas, and I felt like it was a very sensible approach that talked about, basically like there should be places that are roadless and that shouldn't be viewed as threatening to other interests, access, uh, recreational activities in the park, that there's room for both of them without putting roads in the middle of the most sensitive environmental places in the park. Um, and I think that partly inspired me to write a very long comment uh, on my own, which all of you noticed, and that sort of got me involved in the group, and we've connected ever since.
Great. Craig, how about you?
Yeah. Well, I grew up with Adirondacks out my back door, and I'd been exploring the park for my whole life. Every time I could get a few extra days, I'd come up and, try and find someplace new. And it was intriguing to me that at some point, 2014-ish, I started to have a little bit more free time on my hands, and I got involved with the Essex chain hearings, and I learned a little bit about how the state works. And it was clear to me that the right way to engage with the state is through a group of people who can combine their resources and have a louder, clearer voice. And so when I got involved through AWA through Bill Ingersoll, who introduced me to everyone else, and we started this little effort to look at all the submissions that people submitted on the Boreas ponds, and that's when I found Ari's submission, which I noticed immediately, and I showed everybody what he did. Anyway, that's a bit of an aside. But basically, I joined the AWA because I really agreed with its mission and with what Ari was saying about how we really have enough access. We need more wilderness, and that's a cause I completely support and have really enjoyed my 6 years here. So.
Great. And I love it too because I feel like we were all pulled in by different people. So I was pulled in by Brendan Wiltsey, who I worked with him at the Adirondack Mountain Club, and a really good friend of mine. And he's a smart guy. He's a scientist, and so when we would have discussions, we would talk philosophy and talk science. And he started talking about Boreas ponds and getting really passionate. I was like, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And also shout out to Tyler Showcast. He was a super passionate person who I also worked with at the Adirondack Mountain Club, who was super super about that, protecting Boreas ponds. And so that is definitely what really drew me to Adirondack Wilderness Advocates. It's just like a lot of young, passionate people, wanting to make difference, and banding together to do so, and gaining momentum to do it. And so it was definitely a really really special thing to be a part of, and I got to meet all of you, and that's so wonderful. So yeah, I would say that's why I joined AWA for sure. Well, awesome. Well, what do you all think about us as an organization? Like, what makes us different than other environmental organizations? How do we stand out, would you say, from different environmental organizations?
Well, Pete kind of covered this in his introduction, which was when a number of the other groups were involved in the Boreas ponds classification. We were the ones pushing for full wilderness, and that just seemed to make so much sense. When you have so much land that has miles and miles and miles of roads already, all kinds of access. Why not? Why not make more wilderness? It's much harder to go the other direction. So that's, to me, seemed to be the defining reason to support AWA.
So one thing that stands out for me is everybody I've met with this organization has such deep knowledge of the wild places in the park. Um, just some folks know more about these places than I think just about anybody involved with the Adirondacks. And I think that understanding that particularly about motorized access and that um, we want to create these roadless areas and protect these roadless areas because there are so few areas that are remote from roads in the Northeast and even in the Adirondacks. It's a relatively small area. Um, that value and that knowledge of that it came from really impressed me, and um, that makes it a really interesting group to work with because the things that I learned from everybody here, um, and also I think it leads to a lot of common sense arguments for protecting the park and its resources in an environment where, like a lot of there's a lot of arguments out there that are there's some compromises embedded in them, and they're trying to balance a lot of different interests and issues. And I think if you start from a place that it's a good thing to have public land where people are allowed to go, where they don't have to worry about ATVs or cars or carts, it's a great thing, and that's to me what has made my experiences in the Adirondacks most special is those places.
Mm.
I second what everybody said, but I also want to add something that I think is really important about us, and it's reflected in the character of the people who've been involved, the four of us here, and people who aren't on the call, who've had a huge influence on what we do. We don't play politics. When I said in the beginning that when we were formed, we really wanted to be grassroots. That means something. We don't have paid staff. We don't believe in lobbying, and although those can be nice principles to have, they mean a lot more when other folks and other organizations start to realize that while they may not agree with a position that we hold or an interest that we have, they can trust us. And the level of trust that we have with other environmental groups, and particularly with the state, with the Adirondack Park Agency and the Department of Environmental Conservation, it's gotten us in the door. If you look at budgets or staff or any measure like that, we're not much, right? But if you look at the depth of our support, so we've got thousands of supporters, and they turn out and they send messages. And then you look at the fact that all that happens in a milieu where we're trustworthy, where we say what we mean and we stick to it. That's different. The politics in the park have been complicated for a long, long time, really ever since the first debates over Forever Wild and moving forward through the 20th century. They've been complicated, and there's a lot of dealing and wheeling and dealing and backroom stuff and things said and then changed. We're just not interested in any of that. There's, I think what Ari said speaks to it. There's a purity to what we do, and it's the real thing. And I think it keeps us going, even though sometimes it can be frustrating and sometimes it can be hard. I think people understand that about us. I think our supporters understand that about us, and it gives us a great deal of influence and an opportunity to do really good things in the park.
Absolutely. I would say that really what makes us different. I really love how we blend, really look to the science and make our decisions and policies based off of the science, but we also really blend that with heart, right? Like we love these places, we care about these places. I think we do a really, really good job of telling a compelling story, showing why we care and why we love these places. and then looking to the science for the best policies to put in place to do so. And that's really what kind of draws me and continues to draw me to this organization for sure. Um, well, great. Well, let's talk about some of our accomplishments this year. I think one really fun thing that we've been doing has been this, right? The podcast that we've been doing. We've had a couple different land trusts on. This is just such a great way to engage with our supporters and a fun way to promote, the knowledge of the park and an understanding of the park. But yeah, what else would you say that your were our accomplishments this year that you're all proud of?
Well,
I could, yeah.
sorry, since it connects to what I was just saying, and I'll be really short here. I'm excited about DeBoer Pond. Uh, it's a really good example of the fact that we can build these alliances because people trust us, even though they may not agree with us entirely. So we are very interested in DeBoer Pond, um, not only staying wild, and almost the entire shoreline is wild, but recovering where it isn't wild. And where it isn't wild is at the northern end where the lodge is situated. There's a big debate about whether the lodge at DeBoer Pond should stay or go. And there was an effort even to promote a constitutional amendment to make sure that the lodge would be saved for being architecturally significant. So Adirondack Architectural Heritage wants that lodge to stay. Adirondack Wilderness Advocates doesn't. We think that the real gem and real jewel and really significant thing is this beautiful glacial fjord-like body of water that is unspoiled, and we want to see that shoreline rewilded. Well, guess what? So does Adirondack Architectural Heritage. So we started talking about it, and we decided to form an alliance. We can approach the state, and we did. We met with the DEC, and we can say, we don't agree about the fate of the lodge. But beyond that, we don't want to see an intensive day use area. We don't want to see the shoreline develop. We want to see the shore rewilded, and we want people to have an experience of a wild place. So I'm really confident in how that's going to turn out. There is a draft amendment for that unit management plan that's going to be a change from what the state had proposed a few years ago. And I'm pretty confident that it's going to go in the direction we want it to go, that there will be an alternative other than the intensive use area they were proposing that will look a lot better to us. And it's partly because we can form these kinds of alliances and have perfectly frank conversations. We don't agree on everything, but you know what? Wilderness is really precious. So DeBoer was fun.
Great. What were you going to say, Craig?
Well, I was going to talk a little bit about how over the last few years, Kayla, I know you know a lot more about this than I do, but a vast increase in usage of the hiking trails, especially the ones in the high peaks. And one thing that I've always been interested in is when you have to make decisions, is getting the best data you can to support those decisions. So in terms of the hiking trails and parking lots and all of the front country, back country usage, I got interested in measuring some of those. And so I started a group. I'm an adjunct professor at Rochester Institute of Technology, and I started a couple projects to build kiosks and software to help analyze the hiker usage data and make it more accessible. Currently, I'm sure most of you have signed in those paper logs and then wondered what the state does with that data, and I do too. I'd like to see the data be more available and rapidly available so that folks who manage those resources can make better decisions. So that's one thing that we've been working on over the last year, and we're going to continue working until at least spring of next year.
Also, really proud of our advocacy and partnerships to promote visitor use management in the park. And although I haven't been the lead on the Jenkins project at Paul Smith's, it's a really cool project achievement, basically doing an end-to-end visitor use management demonstration on a privately held preserve by Paul Smith's College to demonstrate how these tools could be used by the DEC to manage increased visitor interest and new uses in a way that is much more creative and adaptable than just talking about, this is the number of people who can come, or, these are the uses that are allowed here, and that's the end of the story.
Absolutely. And I think that segues really nice into kind of what we're currently working on. And so the Adirondack Park Agency has opened up the state land master plan, or the slump, and to make some amendment changes. And AWA has been active in that. Right now, you can write into the APA for public comments on the changes that they're going to make. We definitely have been working on our public comments and have made a sign up form to see no motorized use in wilderness. Part of that has also been visitor use management framework, and their uses of carrying capacity. So that's kind of one piece, and there's some other pieces as well, including opening up the use of motorized vehicles in wilderness and on the forest preserve. So that is one thing that you all can actively become a part of, and have your voices be heard. And it's something that we are currently working on as well. Pete, is there anything else you would like to add about the slump amendments?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. There are two places in the draft language that the APA is proposing that open up a risk of motorized access. And one of them has to do with removal of non-conforming structures. It's a tricky issue. And there are a lot of non-conforming structures that were never removed, and certainly not by the deadlines that had been put in the slump. The APA took those deadlines out in their draft language, but they didn't replace them with anything except an open-ended statement, and a statement that allows the agency to use discretion with motors. Well, that's risky. It doesn't mean that we're imputing bad motives to anyone. There's too much of that goes on in the park. But it does mean that we need to really look at that language, because open-ended opportunities for motorized access are just contrary to the letter and spirit of wilderness, and that's obviously why we were formed in the first place. It's a big deal. The other one is access, and this is complicated because we, AWA, certainly believe that people who have mobility impairments have every right to use a wheelchair and access state lands on any trail that they can navigate. But there is a massive difference between that and allowing an ATV or a motorized cart or some sizable piece of machinery that's not designed for indoor use, that's not designed for one person with a mobility impairment to move around. That opens a potential door pretty wide. So we all have to be vigilant, and you can see the petition that we've put up on our website. We'd love you to weigh in, all of our supporters to weigh in on that. I think that's the biggest part of this draft language, although we're going to comment on several things.
Absolutely. And you'll be hearing more from us via email, via our social media. So definitely stay tuned and have your voices be heard. Absolutely. So what are we excited about to do for 2025? I think one thing that I'm excited about is developing a remoteness policy. And Pete, you can definitely um, feel free to talk more about that since that's been your pet project, which is really exciting.
Well, there are a few exciting things coming up. So I'll hand the floor over to others in a moment. But the remoteness thing we've been working on this year, we laid a lot of groundwork. We took some of our budget, thanks to supporters who give us donations. It actually allowed us to hire a law firm to look at complex language, all of it with the goal to have the Adirondack Park Agency and the state of New York inventory, measure, and track how remote lands are. Because, throughout the globe, across the globe, lands are being fragmented at a tremendous rate. And even in the park, it's a big issue, right? There was an argument over the length of roads. It's much more important where they go. What is the road density? How much remote land is there? How does that impact the ecology? And it was part of our founding, really, when we were advocating for Gulf Brook Road to be closed. Brendan took some data from the APA that they had made a map with, and he improved it. And it's sort of been a calling card for us ever since. It's a map that shows the areas in the Adirondacks that are more than 3 miles from a road, and there are very few areas, roughly 5% of the park. This is the wildest, most open area in the East, and only 5% of it's more than 3 miles from a road. Remoteness is precious, and we have to protect it better. But we don't, because we don't even measure it. So our huge campaign, I think, in 2025 is, and we're building alliances to stand shoulder to shoulder with us, is to get the state to measure it so that we know what we have and we know how to protect it.
Awesome. What else? What else are you all excited about for this upcoming year?
Well, I'm looking forward to playing with some trail register data that I hope to extract from uh, logs as a proof of concept project. Craig and I have, worked on several ideas about ways that technology could be used to better capture this information digitally, and we're learning a lot about what tools work and what tools don't work in that space. But one thing that we have that's concrete today is what people are writing in the trail logs. And we've been talking about some tools that we know New York State has available, that might make it possible to extract much better data out of those logs. So we're going to be doing some experiments with that, and perhaps that will give a path for the DEC to produce better trail usage data.
Awesome.
One thing I didn't mention in the previous discussion is that the DEC has, and the APA have sponsored a trail working group, a trail stewardship working group, which is going to come out with a recommendation early next year. And we're all eagerly waiting to see what that recommendation is. And that there'll be an opportunity for public comment in the first part of next year, which I'm hoping we will all get a chance to look at and all of us together comment on. We do want to make sure that trails don't get too much like roads, and we want to make sure that snowmobile trails don't get too much like roads. So we'll be sure to let you know when that's out, and we'll let you know what we think. So there'll be some work coming up, probably around January, February next year.
And Craig didn't mention, maybe out of modesty, but he's on that. So again, doors open for us, and it's very exciting to us. So Craig's on the Trail Stewardship Group. We're on the Visitor Use Management Working Group that the state has. We are members of the High Peaks Advisory Group. We have all these, we have a lot of participation, and it really is a concrete opportunity to affect things that are really important. So having Craig on the Trail Stewardship Group is invaluable.
Absolutely. Anything else anyone else wants to say before we wrap up for the evening?
Well, Kayla, can you talk, maybe just in general terms? I don't think we're ready to announce anything about our possibilities to explore the tapestry of private and public lands with some outings with some partners. Is there anything we can say about that?
Um, I don't know. Is there anything we could say about that? Should we
We're
make it
working on it.
Yeah, I would say we have some fun things in the works. We definitely wanted to figure out a way that, and we've been thinking about this for a long time of like how to engage our supporters, how to get us all out on the forest preserve and out in wild areas because we love to and we want to do it with you all. So there are definitely going to be some fun hikes in the future, and we definitely want to blend that really fun philosophy and discussions about what wildness really means and what wild places mean. And I think a lot of times where we like to focus on those tangibles, the physical aspects, the biological aspects of places of wilderness. But I think those intangibles are really what make it so that we fall in love with the place. And so that's what we're looking to share with you all coming up in the future for the new year. So that's another thing that we're working on in the works for sure. Um, but if
That was
that's,
very well done, Kayla.
oh, thank you. Anything else we want to tell our supporters before we wrap up for the evening?
Just from me, what a few of you already said, at the base of all this, we just love this place. We love doing the work. We love being part of this group. My colleagues, I can't say enough about all of you and our supporters, the people who give us input and give us ideas. And we love this place. We know it. Um, we have a wealth of experience in AWA, being in this wilderness, being in the backcountry. And yeah, it's a love affair. That's the best part.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you, Pete, Craig, and Ari, for taking the time. Thank you all of our supporters for joining us. If you are interested in donating to AWA, you can do so on our website. Just go to adirondackwilderness.org/donate. Um, and you can also if you also want to mail us a check, you can do so. Our mailbox is P.O. Box 191, Keene, New York 12942. So those are a couple of ways you can donate to us. But anything you can contribute helps. But we also would love your engagement and love to hear from you. So you can follow us on our social media platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram. What else are we on? X.
We're on X also.
We're on X. All those fun social media platforms. Yeah, you'll also be hearing more from us via email, especially as we continue to write into the Adirondack Park Agency about the slump amendments. You'll definitely be hearing a lot from us coming up. So please get engaged and we want to hear from you. So thank you all for taking the time and have a lovely night. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.